Lighting? That's an illuminating subject. Let me cast a few of my own lumens on it after the titles. Hey everybody, Anthony Dodge Train Outsider, Merklin Outsider, Night of the Round Boy Table, here with a video that a few people have actually asked me to do. For years I've talked about using cheap mini LED micro fairy lights as a very quick, easy, and inexpensive way of lighting up a block of houses, a large building, what have you. And there's many ways you can do it. But if you want lighting and you don't want to go through the work of, I have friends like Greg from Midsummer Railway who does this in N scale, or High from H&H Express who also does it in N scale, where they not only have buildings and everything lit up, they have them where they light up, and they even have stories going through buildings. Like you'll have a house where somebody's in the living room light goes down, and then there's a hall light or something goes on, and then a bedroom light goes on, the hall light goes off, and then another bedroom light comes on, bathroom light comes on, goes off. They have these programs, and this is fantastic. What these people do is amazing, but it's not what I want to do, because that is a lot of very detailed work, which I personally don't want to do. I want something cheap as chips, as they say in the UK, quick and easy, no hassles. And the easiest way is to not put lighting in, but I kind of want lighting. But if I'm going to do lighting, it's got to be inexpensive, quick and easy. Hey, let me show you the videos I got, because it's going to be a long video, and then I'll come back.
All right, so let's look at what you're going to need to do this simple thing. First of all, or secondly, doesn't matter, you'll want some USB repair kits. 2-line. Okay, you want 2 lines, so you can see there. It's male USB, DIY repair cable. You want some of those. I think I paid $2 each for these. You want the fairy lights, and make sure they're battery operated, where they take either 3 AAA, 2 AA, 3 AA. 3 AA is a great one to look at. And then you'll see I've already put batteries in these. Not that I need the batteries in them, but you want to test to make sure they work. Okay, they work. So now I'm done with that. But the key is you want these to be 2-line. So I think you can see there, it's 2 wires. If it's 3 wires, you can't really do this. You could do it from the end to whatever point. But the nice thing is, with the 2-line, you can cut this. Now this is actually, it was on sale for $5, normally $9, and it's 10 foot. That's a little pricier. I can usually get it for cheaper, but that's what they had, and I really wanted a couple of sets to mess around with. But if you buy it on Amazon, you can usually find 30, 40 feet for $10, $13, something like that. Okay, but you want it to be 2-line. That's why you look for battery operated, because this is 4.5 volts, and it can handle the 5 volts or 4.5 volts that will go through the USB. They now just label them as 5. Okay, so anyhow, you'll want some wire. This is 28 gauge wire, very thin stuff, but since it's only carrying 5 volts, it'll be fine. You can go thicker if you want. You can use speaker wire if you want. Okay, you'll want some shrink wrap tubing. You'll want a marker that is the color of whatever you're going to connect this to. So you'll notice this is red and black wiring. This is red and black wiring, so you want a red or black marker. And I'll explain that when I get to it. You may want an X-Acto knife. You'll probably want some wire cutters. Shrink wrap tubing, if I didn't mention that. And then soldering iron. But that's it. And you can do this in about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Now, by the way, if you've never, ever soldered before, this is probably not something you want to start with, but then again, it is because it's very cheap, and if you screw it up, you didn't screw anything up. It's just, you'll do a little bit of close soldering where you might burn your fingers if you're not careful. And also, before I end this segment, you'll want some sandpaper, which I'll explain again when we get to it. The first thing you want to do after you've got all that you need is you want to take this battery pack, and you should remove the batteries before you start cutting or doing anything. But what you want to do is find the point where the battery pack power connects to the light string power. Usually it'll be sealed up in a little bit like that. You can even see the solder points. So you're going to have to cut that. And you can even, you'll have to excuse my shaking hand. Focus, there you go. But if you look closely in there, you can see the two lines are already split. So what you want to do is you want to cut this below that solder point and remove this protective casing. So cut it right below where you see that soldering point, because that means you're already going to be on live wire. All right, so I've now cut my two wires free. This is where you want sandpaper. You want a good gritty sandpaper. And what you want to do is, although I assume the end of the wires do not have coating, the coating on them can still be pretty good. So what you want to do is just take the sandpaper. I've heard people say you can burn it off, although some real cheap aluminum wiring will not burn off. It'll melt the wiring. As it is, this wiring is very thin. You just want to give it a few scrapes on each side. Sorry. And I'll show you the one thing I forgot to tell you you need. But you really want to give these a good going over. You can't do too much. All right, I've done both. At least I've tried to do both. So, the other thing you need is one of your old phone charger USB. Because what we do now is we experiment with electrocuting ourselves. You pick one of your new ends off with the wires. Spread the wires apart so they don't touch. And then you're going to take the two lines you just cut free. And what we want to do is we're going to hold this wire down on there and then touch that. And as you can see reflected in my hand, we're getting juice. But you got to make sure there's good contact on both points. But by getting juice, it does two things. Number one, we know we've released, and the flickering is my hand shaking, not. But that means we have taken enough off. Now, if you don't like that, as I moved around, you can see it's flickering a bit. You can go ahead and scrape more off. But now, you got to remember, in my case, red, because red's the hot. It's the negative. I'm still holding that in my hand, and I did that on purpose. The one that I'm connecting to red, because I have a red marker, and I'm going to do two things. I'm going to take the red marker and color all up and down. But when you start soldering, the heat of the gun will actually burn off a lot of that. But at least for now, you know this is your red. Okay? So that's my red. Red to red, and the other one do whatever other color you're working on. So if you're doing red and white or black and white, then you would have used a black marker. Unless you're one of those weird people that has a white marker. I'm just kidding. I have white markers. All right, so that is now all marked red. And then it is just soldering, not these two ends together. You don't want to solder these together. You solder the red wire to the reds and the black wire to the blacks, or at least that's how I'm going to do it. I like to keep everything color-coded. And we'll come back and do that.
So let's do a little bit of a review. I got my battery pack, LED lights, made sure it's 2-line before I bought it. I cut it off at the soldering point, and then to be sure, I took each of the 2 lines and sanded it to make sure I got the little protective coating off. I then tested them using the USB plug into a USB tester, and I found the correct side. Make sure you test. If it doesn't work one way, test it the other. Then go back and sand. Maybe you didn't get a good contact. So you might have to try it a couple of times, but just keep testing it both ways. Once you find, and since I have black and red's the positive, the matching wire, I took my red marker and I marked it in red. All right. So then I just happen to have black and red wiring, showing it to 2 different cameras. And what I do is, what I like about this wiring, it's 28 gauge, it's thin braided, is that it's easy to peel off the casing and get yourself a nice little tip and then twist it up, because I'm getting ready to solder. Now, before I go any further in the soldering process, I'm going to take these 2 lines and I'm going to put, there, I'm going to put my shrink inks on them. The shrink insulation wrap. I think half of one should be enough for each side. Now, before I put that on, I'm going to put, there, I go a couple of sizes up. So I've got this green one, which is a little thicker, because I want it to be able to fit over these 2. And what I do is I fit, whoops, doing that backwards. I fit the thicker one over first over both lines. Okay. And then I fit the tightest ones
over each one. And then I'm going to do something that may seem redundant, but there's a reason. Now that I've got, I'm going to bend that to hold it in place. Now that I've got these on, I'm going to take my red marker and I'm going to put red on the red line again. So hopefully you can see that. Because when you start soldering, the heat can actually melt off the red marker you put on that line. This way you just have a redundant system to keep it going. Now this wire has a life of its own. Now I'm going to try to do something I do not like to do, which is solder on camera. And I apologize if afterwards, when I show this, you can't see what I did, because I'm trying to get this from 2 different angles and I'm trying to make sure the phone's up. I got a little holding alligator clip station here, and I'll move these cameras up. Okay, and I got my, now this is lead-free compound. Your lead-free flux. I would prefer to use leaded flux. I think it adheres better, but this stuff actually does a good job. I'm going to dip each wire tip into it. I'm going to clip this one up here for a minute. Then I'm going to take these 2 wires, red and black, make sure they're twisted up nicely. These are super thin, which as my shaky hands get worse are a little harder, but I like the flexibility of them. And I'm going to dip them in the flux. Some people paint it on. If I can, I just dip the ends. It cuts out the middleman. And I'm going to put those up here. Now, I'm a lefty. So I secured the left side because I'm going to hold the soldering iron in my left hand. And bring in the next alligator clip. Put a little bit of extra flux on here, even though it already should have some flux on it. And let's see if by holding the so no matter which camera I use, my arms and elbow are going to be in the way. There we go. Now, a lot of people blow on their flux. My dad told me, don't blow on the flux, let it dry naturally. Or solidify. Now, I just took it apart because I don't feel like it was a strong enough join. That's the problem. Everything moves no matter how much I try not to move it, it all moves. That's a good join. All right. So that wasn't a lot of fun, and you got to see me struggle. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and drop this one out of the way. No, I have not coated and covered them yet because I would have to test them. Bam! Ah, that was much easier second time through. All right. So there, it probably didn't show up well, especially if you're watching on a phone. I'm not done soldering, but I'll move this camera in. So you may be wondering, why didn't I bring the shrink wrap up? Am I going to do that now? No, because before I seal anything in, even though I trust my joints, I'm going to test it again. But to test it, I've now connected it to this long, or 2 long spools of wire, because I need a length. Now, I tend to do a long length right now because I'm running them to USB ports. So I run about 8 feet of line. But eventually when I do the buildings, I will not even be lighting up whole strands. I'll be lighting up sections of strands, and they'll only go a couple of inches under the table. But that's going to be, I would say, at least a year if I work fast before I'm ready to start lighting up every building individually. So until that time, because what I'll do is I'll just drop some lines and drill holes under each building through the table, and then run one bus wire to the USB port, or put each block on a USB. But let me go ahead and measure this out. I'm going to measure about 8 feet. Why? Because the table is 8 feet long. So if it goes to the middle of the table and bends back around, that still gives me enough slack in the wire to plug it into what I currently have. Okay? So what I've done is I measured off about 8 feet of line, which is way too much in reality, but again, this is all recyclable, so when I do the real things, I can cut these into 1-foot sections and still use them. So I'm not wasting anything, even if I'm just putzing around, messing with silly lighting. That's not permanent. Now, a couple of things I'll mention, call them tips from the grave. My dad, especially when working with fine wiring, would always say, if it's twist wiring, you know, strand wiring, and you got to twist it up. Take off a little bit more than you need of the coating. Twist it up tight and then cut it back down. That way you'll have a very tight pack that won't fray. You won't get the odd hair wire loose when you're trying to solder and everything else that anybody who solders, you know, you have that issue. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tin these up, because that will hold them in place. Even though technically you really only need to tin one side, I always tin both sides and then put a little extra tin on. But by putting the tin on, I hope you guys are seeing that, just putting the tin on, it gives them a stronger, sturdier, stiffer surface than the little lines. So all good. Make sure you always clean off your point. I run a very hot soldering iron. Okay. So now, before I do anything else, I need to unplug that because I'm going to plug in my USB port, and we're going to test this. So we got some wires there. I got to bring this over here, and this is the fun part. I got to try to hold things down, and what I do is I hold the black down with my finger on it like that, trying to make good contact, and then bing, 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 we have contact. Everything's good. So I am ready to solder. So bing, we're good. The flickering is my hand shaking, not the lights. All right. So now it is all about the soldering. And before we solder, now I've got a third set. This is actually a little bit smaller. And I am going to put these
And I'm not worried about red or black because my wires are red and black. And the black end just fell to the floor. Like a, let's bring that around, set that out of the way. But I'm going to put a few of these blue shrink wraps because they just fit over the red, and I'll explain why I do this. This is not a step you have to do because you're not going to do what I'm doing. You're just going to light up a building. But what I do is I put a few of these on, and then I use them instead of tape. Oh, shaky hands. There we go. I put a few of these on, and they just help hold they protect the two lines, but they hold the two lines together so you don't get two lines just sagging and bagging. It keeps the lines tighter together. You can even solder them closed if you want, but I just do this so that when I go to run it under my table through the slots, I don't have inverse rainbows of line hanging down. So I just put these, so I'll space them out every, foot or two, and it just keeps the two lines together. And I'm not marking anything. I don't need to mark anything because I have red and black lines, and I'm connecting red and black lines to red and black lines. And these you don't have to mark anyhow because they're not doing. But if you are connecting certain colors to certain colors to certain colors, you got to keep it straight. So if you got red and purple wiring or blue and purple wiring, there's some of you know, many of you know, but every country has a standard of what the colors are supposed to represent, which ones are primary positives, primary negatives, or primary grounds, you get the idea. Green's usually ground. Anyhow, I'm babbling while I do this. So that's like 6 of them on. That's good enough. And we're going to put red here temporarily. And we're going to take our little red fella here, and I'm just going to dip. Should have dipped it, but I'm lazy. Do as I say, not as I do. Just bend that out, trying not to get the flux on me, and then this will just help me keep it steady as long as I don't move everything. Is everybody seeing what I'm doing? Yeah, you can kind of see there, but I'll change that, the other camera here, and take out the magic wand again. A little bit of soldering, or a lot of solder. And whoops, I'm gonna put that back, but I forgot one thing. I need my yellow. You caught it live in person. See, I'm so busy focused on showing you what I'm doing that I forget one of the important pieces. And of course, had I screwed it up badly, it wouldn't have been a big deal. Okay, hopefully that solder is still viable. Otherwise, I'll have to clean it all off. But all right, wire, work with me. Yeah, got it. Yes. Okay. Yay. That didn't take too long. Every successful joint for me these days, especially with micro soldering, is a major moral victory. So now we'll do the black. And I just got to find the end to the black. Da, 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 da. There it is. Come here, you. And let's dip him in the solder, or the flux, I should say. A lot of gooey, chewy flux on there, I'm sure. Hey, 2 for 2. Yay. And now, before I solder everything up, one last time, we got to test. Did it all go as planned? And the answer is, plugged the wrong thing in, so it wasn't a failure. I was like, wait a minute, I just tested all that. All right, let's plug this in. Ta-da, there we go. Now we plugged the right thing in. That's the problem when you got 4 different USB things sitting here and accidentally plugged in my this cam here. But there, we, I don't know if this camera's showing the lights on. But that's it. Now it's just shrinky wrap everything over it. I'm going to use one of these blues. I should be able to squeeze it over, but I'm not going to go ahead and do that on camera. But, well, maybe I'll do it once, just in case there's somebody who's actually trying to learn their soldering skills from me. So you put the solder, or I'm sorry, you put the shrink wrap over your joint, and then don't use the exact point where you've been soldering, because there's stuff in there that can mess up the point. Use the end up here you don't tend to solder with, and just rub it along, and hopefully you all can see it shrinking and fitting over the joint, and that just strengthens the joint. So if you accidentally pull it or snag it, you don't break the solder joint, you break. But as you can see, now the thing is, if you hold it in one place too long, you can actually overheat the shrink wrap and disconnect the joint inside. Then you got to cut it, peel it, and resolder it. All right. And yes, I did forget my yellow bit there. Now there's a couple of tricks you can do. You can cut this in half and splice it on, or you can use yellow electrical tape or whatever color electrical tape you want. So see, this is the problem. This is why I don't like to do this stuff on camera. There's always something I screw up because I'm focusing on talking to the camera and not specifically on the job. So I'm sure some of you caught that. Oh, you forgot to put the other yellow on. So technically, since they're both going to go inside a sleeve, I don't even have to do that, but I like to do it. But it's a delicate surgery to do. You just probably edit half of this out. So I'm going to put this here and here. No, yeah. All right, come on down.
Okay.
As I said, use the fatter part of the tip. Don't use the same point where you solder. 'Cause it, okay, I think we're good. And then I got to do the other end. Clean it up. And there we go. There's only one little last bit I'm going to show you. So I just grabbed a random building off my layout. Now this one doesn't have anything in the bottom. I picked this up part of it hadn't been put together, but it was just in a box of spare parts, and I just stuck it together. It doesn't have walls. It does not have, I don't know if you can see that, it does not have the black paper inside to stop light bleed on buildings. So what I may do is go up with either a black marker or a little bit of a paintbrush, and I'll just paint the walls and the ceiling black. It obviously needs that. But what I like to do, and I'm going to have to turn the lights out to do this, but once I plug the light in, it's just going to light up a section, and you'll have different shades. And again, if you want to change tones, you can take colored markers or paint pens, and you can paint over the lights, and it'll give you slightly different shades. So I'm going to turn off lights here. I don't need them all up. Okay, so I plug my lights in and get everything out of the way. I'm done with this, so I'll turn that off. Amazing. The one thing about these wires is they have a life of their own, and they just, if they're like anacondas, if they can wrap around something, they'll do it. Now, the nice thing about these lines is they are flexible. I hope you can see that. I can bend these lines so I can space them out and put them up in a place where two rooms might be lit up. And again, if you want to put floor walls and everything in, you just drill a little hole, and remember, feed these up in. But in general, this is just for general lighting. And you can see, not very bright. There's one room here that's kind of lighting up. So I might decide, let's try 3 lights, and let's see what 3 lights do. And as long as you keep them off the wall. Now, I don't know how well that's showing up, but it gives the semblance of lighting there. And it, you know, I have people talk about, well, you want it to look like the light is coming down from the ceiling. When you have the paper curtains on, the light, and with 3 lights in there shining at different angles, it creates a uniform light flow. So there is no, that looks like it's being lit up from the bottom or being lit up from the top. And again, this is just a real cheap, rescued from the garbage heap building that I then just threw some paper window shade covers in. But yeah, that works. And again, you can blacken out certain windows if you don't want lights on them. You could just put a piece of black tape or cardboard over it so the light doesn't bleed through. And these lights aren't that awful that they bleed through the walls unless you put too many of them in. So that's all you do. You experiment with, okay, how many lights are going to light it up? And then if you want only certain rooms lit up, you just can put black tape or black marker behind what's on the window, you know, little piece of black electrical tape or masking tape, and it'll prevent it from going bleeding through that particular window. But that is quick and easy. But if you want to do a very inexpensive way of lighting your houses up relatively realistically, this is about as cheap and easy as it is. So let's go back to me to finish up. All right, so there it is. That's the point of this video, is not to tell you how to do a lighting system. It's if you want to add lights and you don't want to put the heavy lifting in to put in one of these really amazing light systems, run with Arduinos, and you can light up different rooms. If you just want, hey, I want a couple of lights in some buildings, this is about as cheap and easy as you can do it.
And it's effective. And I tried to show you how it's effective and show you what you can do. Like if you want it even more realistic, is put the, cover up the windows you don't want light shining through. And then you can say, oh, there's only about 10 of these 20 windows on that apartment building that have lights on them. And again, if you start saying, yeah, but what if you want this light to work here on some days and this light to work, then you got to go to a more advanced system. That's the point of what I'm showing you here. This is the easiest, simplest, cheapest, most cost-effective base way of doing lighting. And it does work. And there are so many different ways you can do it. You can light up every individual building. And the nice thing is when you buy a 30-foot string of that light, oh, you need 3 inches or 4 light or whatever in this building, and you need 5. You just keep cutting and soldering, cutting and soldering. But again, just to repeat myself, this is the most base form of having lighting in a system where it looks effective. And if you want more, you'll have to do more. But if you're just happy, oh look, I got a row of houses lit up, and you're not particular about anything, it's a great way to go. And it does look realistic enough, especially if you take steps I've mentioned. So I hope the people that said they wanted to kind of see how I do it and did the demonstration, I've shown it in my live stream. But I think people are usually more like, oh, that's too bright and that's dull. Yeah, we're experimenting. We're testing. I've got to see how much lighting that big station can have. And I put a lot in because I figured it was very cavernous, but these particular lights are very bright. So anyhow, I guess I'll just respond to comments when they come in. So on that note, I'm going to say Auf Wiedersehen, tschüss, and happy trains. Take care, everybody.